This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is sponsored by Pulsera. Whether replacing radio reports, alerting specialty teams, or managing mass casualty incidents, Pulsera simplifies communication. One tool, every day, regardless of event. Learn more at pulsera.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Better Every Shift podcast. My name is Aaron Zamzow. I'll be your host today. I am a fire officer. I'm also an author here for Fire Rescue One. I am not alone. Someone's got to guide me. If you know me, you know I'm correct on that one. We got the commander with us, the editor-in-chief of Fire Rescue One, Janelle Fosquet. What's going down, Janelle?
Doing great, Sam. How are you?
I'm good. Super fired up as always, but it means a little bit more when I have my good friends that join us for our podcast. So today we got a good friend of mine and a mentor of mine, overall very smart and talented chief who commits a lot of time to getting better and to developing people around him. We have Fire Chief Jason Caughey with us. How you doing, Chief? Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here again.
Hey, Aaron, it's great to be on with you and be back again for another episode. So thanks, buddy.
Well, always good to see you. We've gone back a long time, way back to days when we were, they used to call us like the boy band, I think, with Chief Waldo, when we were behind the scenes trying to absorb all of this knowledge from some of the fire service's best. And it's really helped mold you. You're now the chief. You've been the chief at Laramie County Fire Authority in Cheyenne now for how many years have you been there now?
Boy, I'm in my 14th year here now, Aaron, and if you can believe it, but yeah, a decade or 13, 14 years ago when you and I met and trying to absorb that knowledge and wisdom from chiefs around us, right? That laid the foundation for a lot of us to get to where we are today.
We want to talk today, we want to focus a little bit more on, doing more with less staff. And maybe less resources. And we'll dig into, obviously we always talk about leadership. We always talk about health and wellness. It makes its way in there. But we really want to focus more on command. And I have to say to thank you to Pulsera for sponsoring this podcast and this project. You had done some work with Janelle on incident command. And Janelle, do you want to intro that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. This is part of our Fire Command Ready series. And basically it's a new series on Fire Rescue One that's focused on new incident commanders, getting them up to speed. And Chief Caughey wrote a great piece that's directed at volunteers and the volunteer piece and some command hacks. So we want to walk through some of that today.
Perfect. Bob, let me start though, Chief. What kind of sparked that idea for this article?
Boy, Aaron, 20 years ago, when I traveled the state of Montana working with volunteer and commendation departments, we'd go in at night and work on those firefighter skills, right? But we'd also try to implement that command function. And so often we'd get to these small departments and they'd say, we don't have the staffing to fill this position. And that alone was reason enough for us to say that's why it's more important that you fill the command function, because there's so much more legwork that needs to be done on those fire grounds to protect those volunteers and those firefighters and get the needed resources coming to support them. So this has been a journey of love. And of course, Chief Brunacini's passion for command really influenced us also. And you read the NIOSH reports on firefighter fatalities, and the command function, decision-making, communications is always in the top 5. So it's important for us.
Off camera, we are talking about, not everybody can be FDNY or not everybody can run the same. Elaborate a little bit on what you mean by that.
Well, there's 2 parts to that. One, fireground operations is one piece of that. We can't always do the same fireground tactics that a larger metro department might be able to do because of the lack of staffing. The flip side is that the cultural piece, right, is that metro departments have their culture, but that might not fit in frontier or rural United States where they have 10, 15, 20 members, and on a good day, they get 6 on a fire ground. So being able to build a system that fits your community and fits your capabilities without sacrificing the mission, which is service to our community, is critical. And the command function is one of those pieces. It has to fit your local environment. And that's one of the hacks, is being able to build those relationships or playbook with your neighbors so that you're speaking the same language and performing the same fireground operations. The expectations become the same without lessening the standards of performance for those firefighters on a fireground.
So take me through that, because I know we have a lot of volunteer firefighters and chiefs that listen to the program. So you have 5 things that volunteers can do. So go ahead and take me through them.
Those hacks are important because without your neighbors in those volunteer departments, without the mutual aid partners, the ability to perform safely on that fireground can be compromised because of the lack of staffing, the lack of members. You don't know who you're going to get on any given day or time. So building a playbook that works with the neighbors is important. Building a common communication model is important. We did that locally here, and we're still working on it. 10-year project really here that we call the Field Operations Guide. And what it is it's basically our playbook for county response. And like you brought up FDNY, which is a phenomenal organization, they have hundreds of apparatus coming to the scene operating on the same playbook. You might have 4, 5, 6 agencies in a small community working together that without that common playbook, common terminology, common understanding, it's pretty challenging to know what you're doing on the fireground. So
yeah, one of the hacks, of course, was build mutual aid, automatic partnerships. You're talking about develop standardized responses using the same terminology, develop a consistent command function. Okay, so you had mentioned earlier, everybody needs to have some investment in learning and understanding that, right?
Yeah. So one of the pieces that I think we all get accustomed to feeling comfortable on an incident, right? So Aaron, you feel comfortable in the gym because you go to the gym or you work out in the engine bay every single day, right?
Try to, yes.
When you miss a day or a two, you probably feel uncomfortable, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Same thing with command. So for an organization, you can't just flip on command like a light switch and feel comfortable. You have to do it every time, every place, continually. So that way, when command's not present, your members actually feel uncomfortable because they're like, hey, someone needs to be in command. And so one of the ways, as I wrote in that article, was utilize it for the spaghetti feed or for the Tuesday night training or the Saturday training. And what it does is, one, it gets it so that everybody feels comfortable every time having command function in place. But 2, it provides opportunities for you as a leader to mentor other people in that role so that you can grow the layers underneath you, right? Which is, what's the decision making look like? How do you call for resources? How do you communicate on radio? All those things that maybe some of those smaller volunteer departments or even career departments that run a few hundred calls a year versus hundreds of thousands of calls a year will benefit from, because they'll get to practice it. And the other piece is do it on every call type, regardless of if it's a fire or an EMS call or a vehicle extrication or whatever that crazy call might be. Make it so that your folks get uncomfortable if there isn't a command presence there.
Okay. And even like responding the same, hey, even though this might be something small, take command like you would, it is something larger, correct? Like same radio communications. I know in our agency, some officers will call comm center and just tell them what they're doing, as opposed to calling comm center, get the acknowledgement back, right? And I've been guilty of that because I've done that on the wrong channel. And that's why they're like, yeah, go ahead on channel 2, engine 5. You're supposed to be on channel 1, and then of course I look at my crew and I go, where were you guys for that one? Right. But I apologize to everybody because I said 5, but I know Chief left one out, and knowing him and how thorough he is, the 5th one would be to continually evaluate. Right. And I know you do that as part of your own culture. But what am I looking at? If I'm a chief, how can I evaluate my command right now? And
yeah, well, I think you hit on part of it right there. Aaron, is that consistency is important, and it's easy for us to get relaxed and cut corners because that's human nature, right? We end up getting lazy. And so having those people that hold you accountable in your system to make sure that your organization doesn't get lazy. You'll hear our folks on occasion start to take those shortcuts, or they hear radio traffic from some other organization, they try to mimic it, again, getting outside of our system. So that evaluation piece that you're talking about is just reinforcing it. Make sure that you have those designated adults that are listening to those incidents, listening to the call types, making comments, doing the tailboard review afterwards to say, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? What did we miss? And then following up with that. And again, through training, making sure that all of our training events reinforce those good behaviors. So when we are stressed and we do have adrenaline going, we fall back on good behaviors instead of bad behaviors.
Yeah, and Chief, it seems like hack number 1 and 2, both developing a consistent command function and develop standardized response, both align really well with crew resource management and sort of that checklist model. Do you see that all working together? And do you follow CRM principles?
Yeah, I think crew resource management is a huge part of it. And if we neck this down to those little tiny organizations in rural America, their crew resource management might be, what's the difference between a brush truck and a tender and an engine? And having pre-identified expectations for each of those things as they come to a call. So just making it fit your local community, whatever crew resource management fits for you, is important. Without it, you're flying dark. You're basically drawing lines in the sand, trying to create a play when it's the heat of the battle. So back in the day when we played football as kids, we might have drawn a play in the palm of our hand. So you go left, you go right, you go down the field, or we might have drawn it in the dirt and then swept over it. You don't want to be doing that on a fire ground where people's lives are at risk and properties at risk. You want that stuff planned out prior to it. And that's all hack 1 and 2 is let's get these things ironed out now when we can do it in a calm, air-conditioned or heated environment versus sweltering heat like we have today or freezing cold like we'll have in a few months.
Yeah. Well, this all kind of stems with one of your mentors, of course, Chief Brunacini. And so you learned a lot about command from him. He's got the 8 functions of command. So let's break that down a little bit. This is something you want to instill within your organization, right? Following Bruno's tips.
Yeah, I think adapting what Bruno preached to us, and obviously Bruno adapted what FireScope had developed in the 70s and what the U.S. Forest Service had developed and CAL FIRE developed. But those 8 functions of command, assumption, confirmation, and positioning, right? So that first one alone is someone has to assume command. Now, you might be working command in a small department where you're running the pump or you're doing a task level skill, but as soon as possible, get yourself out of that task level skill. Make sure that you have situation of evaluation. You're evaluating the incident. We don't want the incident to get worse upon your arrival. Communications, probably the number one piece of this is having a communications system. Now, we emphasize the ecosystem in our organization. That's what NIMS emphasizes. That might not be what you use, but I'd strongly recommend taking a look at that. And then identifying how we deploy. What are those resources? What are our mutual aid? That goes back to hack 1 and 2, which is, get that stuff defined, laid out on paper so there's no guessing when you get to the incident. And then strategy and incident action plan, that's ongoing. We don't expect you to sit down with a Form 112 or 114 in a federal form and fill it all out on those small incidents. But what we do expect is that you have some sort of an action plan. We're going to do this until X, Y, or Z occurs. Then we're going to do the next step and mentally prepare yourself for it. And then 6, the organization, just making sure that everybody in your organization knows how to do it, and the organization of the fire ground, whether you have to develop divisions, sectors, and groups, or you have to expand the command function, be prepared for that. 7 is review, evaluate, and revise. That's ongoing on the fire ground. Give yourself timestamps. So we ask dispatch to give us a ticker running so that they remind us. Sometimes when you're on scene for 45 minutes, it felt like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have somebody checking in with you on an interval, 10, 15, or 20 minutes, you might miss something. So
Benchmarks, dispatch will tell you, hey, you're at the 5 minute, 10 minute.
yeah.
Just so that maybe that's a cue for you to possibly do a par check, or like you said, reevaluate. Are you making progress? Do I need to make revisions? Right.
Yeah, and I think that's important because again, time slips away from you. It speeds up when you're in that command seat or in that command function, and before you know it, you're behind the eight ball. Heck, let's face it, you start behind the eight ball because the incident's already occurring before that citizen even notifies 911, right? So we're already delayed. It's like being handicapped on the golf course. Anytime on the golf course, I'm handicapped. So
I was just gonna say that's just called golf, buddy.
right.
I'll let you finish. You got one more Bruno's functions.
Yeah, the continued transfer and terminate command. So one of the challenges as a young command officer is as the incident starts to dwindle down, one, our firefighters start to lose focus. Two, command loses focus. Three, that's when injuries occur because by golly, the threat is gone, but we let our guard down. So when we do that eighth function of command, we have to make sure that we continue it all the way through the termination of command through that process.
Well, let's talk about cancer here too for a second, right? That's where, hey, making sure people are still on air and then utilizing, rehab, right? Like we can start to get lazy there. And I think that's also part of that.
Yeah, I don't think the incident ends until we get back to the station and everything's back in quarters. So the command function, you're basically saying I'm responsible for the safety and wellness of our folks. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not aggressive, right? That means we're aggressive, but we're in a controlled environment. We're paying attention to all those little things that might jump up and bite us and become big things at the end. And Aaron, you hit it with the cancer piece. Obviously, cancer is well identified as a risk in the fire service, but we still are doing dumb stuff, right? We're not wearing our SCBAs, like you said. We're not deconning after the event. We're sitting and eating a snack from the roach wagon with dirty hands after the incident. I mean,
did you say roach wagon? Is that like a gas station up by you, or what is it?
It could be.
Okay. All right. Yeah. A pre-made bad food item is what we're saying.
Yeah, and doing it with cancer-ridden hands, right? Because we didn't even bother to wipe our hands off. So all those pieces, and then when we get back to the station, not deconning and cleaning our equipment, and without having protective stuff on. That's all part of the command function. That's the greater, bigger picture of command, but those are all pieces of it.
Let's talk about that a little bit. I like the fact you said you're still in command when people are in overhaul. You still have to watch out for their safety. Part of command should also be that decon component. It should be that safety component. So for a volunteer agency, where can they go to get some guidelines on doing that? Because right now there might be someone looking at each other going, well, we don't even have a policy for that, and you said it is part of command. So elaborate where people can go and where they should start.
Absolutely. Well, there's lots of reports out there, but the IAFC VCOS, the Volunteer Combination Officer section, has the Lavender Ribbon Report, which is the best practices for cancer. Those are great resources. That VCOS page with all of the ribbon reports on it is a great source for those smaller, for any organization, but for those smaller organizations that are struggling with, how do I do that? And this is hardware store stuff. You can go down to Ace Hardware or your local family hardware store and get the stuff you need to do just that, a little bit of cancer mitigation or reduction for you. But on the command piece of it, it's sharing. It's reaching out to those organizations that may be 100 miles away from you that are doing a really nice job, and learning from, gaining perspective from some of those other organizations. Again, if you're in rural Wyoming, which we are, it probably doesn't do us a lot of good to look at FDNY or Denver Fire because they have so much more, but there are pieces that we can learn from.
Yeah. So let's talk about how to work on command presence. Even if it doesn't matter if you're volunteer, full-time, lay some knowledge.
Right. And it's pretty common sense, but some of the pieces that we tell our folks as they're growing in the command function is, first off, just breathe. Take a breath. You didn't cause the problem or the incident that you're responding to, right? So yes, we own responsibility of doing the best we can there, but you didn't cause it. So take a breath, calm yourself down. The more systems you have built in place that you've practiced is going to help you remain calm. And I'll never forget one of the first fires that I had. This is 20 plus years ago, almost 30 years ago, where I was command officer. And I had a new company officer on a little volunteer department named Sam Stanley. He got on scene first and he assumed command, and he sounded like one of those guys, right? He was just excited and going at it. And he was in the working command function. I pulled in behind him and I established or transferred command to me. And I said, we called out a play, offensive fire attack, alpha side of the structure. And Sam's voice came down to normal and he fell right in line because we had practiced that play so often that it became natural for him. He didn't have to think about it. His adrenaline went away, his excitement went away, and now he was pinpoint focused on what needed to be done. So if you're a new command officer, do a ton of scene size-ups, more sets and reps that you can get sitting in front of a computer screen or a TV or a video, and you go through those mental reps of that system that you use in your organization, how you mark on scene, what do you call dispatch, practice those. Because then when you get in that real seat and the adrenaline buzz hits you, now you just fall right back into what you did 1,000 times in the classroom or 1,000 times out on the training ground.
I always resort back to our friend Chief Selka. I think one of the committee meetings that we were at, he went through and he used some cars and some trucks and went through a command scenario. But I took some things from that. He was joking around, but when I try to apply this, I was even told, hey, if your lapel mic is on your right-hand side, you're talking into your lapel mic. The other part that I found difficult was I would look at a scenario and I would think of what to say, and my mouth says something different. And I can relate to that in this podcast every moment of my life when I do this, right? Because the brain and the mouth don't connect. Are you saying that also, like when you're doing these size ups, do them verbally, right? Do them out loud,
Yep.
Walk around the parking lot or wherever it is, right?
Yep. On the radio. The other piece is what we teach out back during training for those new command officers is before they even cue the mic up, say out loud what their assignment's going to be, what assignment they're giving. They can be in the command rig and you can see them talking to themselves, and then all of a sudden you'll see them cue the mic and actually say it. So that way the words match what they were thinking in their head when they actually cue the mic up.
So they'll say it out loud, like engine 5 fire attack, and then they'll click on.
Yep.
Really?
Yep. Oh. Or dispatch, get me mutual aid from whatever. And they'll practice that rep in training before they even cue the mic. We all get self-conscious, right?
Yeah.
And when we screw up, it only impacts us down the line that we're now self-conscious, and it makes it harder for us to communicate. So we teach them, can we practice it before you even cue the mic up so no one knows if you screwed up or not? Then when they get in the real world, they've already done those reps.
He talks about sitting in the car at the traffic light. Do you ever do that? You don't sing in the car, but maybe you do the scene size up in the car.
So we did a little thing, and we'll bring it back this next quarter. But the first quarter of this year, we did Carpool Command. You've seen Carpool Karaoke,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Great.
And
Yeah.
So we actually did Carpool Command. One, we did it in two functions. One, we took our training officer and we went back in the command vehicle and we drove around, and it was just him and I doing just like the TV show, right? And an incident, we talk about it. And then that Saturday, the training officer gave a song to all of our members. We had about 50 members at it. We assigned them to an apparatus. We put them out. So there's 15 or so apparatus out. And we gave them the lyrics to Queen, the song. And we made them on the radio do karaoke of the Queen song so that they could get comfortable talking on the radio. And then they'd get videoed by the person in the back seat. So we had these videos on the cell phone. I guess it's not video, right? But on the cell phone of them performing those songs or those lyrics, which then
We're
they
talking
could then
like
laugh
Bohemian Rhapsody. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, practicing those reps, and my wife will probably tell you that I practice the echo communication with her because I want to make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. So she says, honey, clean the kitchen. I'll be like, clean the kitchen? And she'll be like, yes. I'm like, affirmative. Got it. So it's probably a good lesson for our marriages.
Yeah, repeat the order back. Yeah. Okay, I like that. Okay, so two great things. Although Janelle, I think we need to do a special of just our favorite chiefs doing Carpool Command, making 100%. Up their own scenarios. Wouldn't that 100%. Be great? I know Chief Bullfighter would be perfect at this. Chief Salka, we're going to get to work on this one.
Imagine putting Goldfeather or Salka or Waldo in a command vehicle with Aaron and us videoing it from the back seat, recording it as we give a mark on scene of this, Home Depot, and we got fire on the Alpha side, and it'd be fun, right?
It comes back to make these things fun, make them interesting. I had a lieutenant, when I was writing for a promotion, he would pull over randomly and he'd say, "Zam, give me a size up now. This is on fire." And I'll tell you, the first time I did it was horrible. Second time I did it was pretty horrible. But the 30th time I got pretty good and comfortable with it. So how do I not become comfortable with that? Like, do you just continually challenge yourself and find ways to do it like you were just talking about? Is it teaching? Is that the next thing to keep you, also up on your skills? I mean, where else can we go?
I think as you advance in your career, and you know this, Aaron, that the next great opportunity is to teach, right? So leading that crew, leading and mentoring that next generation is your opportunity to hone your skills, because I think you've said it and I've said it, when we go to an organization and present, we actually walk away with more ideas than we feel we left, because of being in that role now that you're actually absorbing things through teaching versus just delivering items. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It also, you have to refresh and recharge, and you got to do your research a little bit. And then the other part of that too is you got to be able to take feedback, right? Even if you're a teacher, someone might hear something. And that's been really the lesson on a lot of our podcasts. Even if you don't want to hear what they have to say, you can learn something.
Dan, I've got a question for both of you. So we know from previous What Firefighters Want surveys that people do not get enough incident command training. Some people get thrown in the deep end, and then they might have less than 24 hours of command training per year, even if that. So I'm curious what type of command training that you have been through and what you think is the optimal amount. How often should Zam, a new lieutenant, how often should he be practicing command skills?
Yeah, a great question, Janelle. And obviously time's short for all of us, any size organization. We utilize a system that we purchased the ability to train our command officers through, which is the Blue Card system, which is Chief Brunacini's system. Through that system, they have to do so many sets and reps hours in CEs to maintain their skill set. That's a small portion of what we actually do. In addition to that, we do quarterly minimum officer training requirements, and one of those generally is a command function, commanding of this type of incident. What are the critical fireground factors that you want to be prepared for a wildland event, which would have been last quarters? Coming into fall, as we move in towards motor vehicle accidents and semi-accidents and hazmat events because of the winter conditions that Zam and I know, Janelle, it's a little white thing that forms ice on the roads. It's generally cold. Yeah.
Yep, sucks.
Yeah. So preparing for those call types. So the command function is going to be focused around chimney fires and vehicle accidents. And so we make them or have them as one of their expectations quarterly that they have to have some sort of command function training in their requirements. So to put in hours on that, that's tough, right? Because we're stretched so far thin. On top of that, we also have, as part of those company officer minimum requirements, is usually some piece of the UL fire research, right? That they have to do research on and go through one of the curriculums online. And again, because it's not only just communicating on the radio, knowing what resources you are, all those pieces, it's utilizing that vast knowledge that you must have to support the decision making on those fire grounds, right? So it's important. And I look at our hours and we want more, but we have to be realistic with our membership. What can they do in this time frame?
Pulsera scales to meet your dynamic communication needs, from routine patient alerts to managing large-scale emergencies. Every responder and clinician connects seamlessly. Familiar, yet simplistically powerful. Pulsera streamlines your response, from routine transfers to regional disasters. One tool, every day, regardless of event. Discover more at Pulsera.com.
And I'm curious, Aaron, from your perspective, how much of it is sort of mandated training and how much of it is where you just have to be intentional and go do it on your own, like sitting in the car and running through a size up where you're just doing it on your own, being proactive about it?
That brings up a lot of good questions and points, but I'll tell you, I've learned from Chief Caughey, I've learned from Chief Waldo. I can go call Chief Lieb if I want and say, hey, Chief, do you got 3 commands? So I'm very, very, I'm honored and a lot of times I'm overwhelmed with just the opportunities that I have. But it also, with that, I feel like an obligation to utilize the knowledge that they've shared. So we've been doing a little bit is when we go through our territory and we're doing inspections, I'll try to do one myself first. I'll try to do 2 myself and then ask the crew, all right, my driver's name's Mike. Mike, you go. And then, Mike is bilingual, so he'll do one in Spanish too, just to show me up. But it's kind of how we're trying to get used to our territory. And for me, I know it's a weakness. So I just got to let my shield down and say, I'm going to be horrible at this sometimes. So for me, it's just a personal thing where I don't want to let my mentors down. I don't want to let my crew down. And I know that everybody's listening coming in. And so hopefully we're making that part of the culture. But again, I'm so lucky to do what I do here. But to elaborate more for someone who maybe doesn't have that, I know out of experience, you can send Chief Caughey an email and he will send you some stuff that you could work on with your crew. He'll probably, answer any questions and probably get on a call with you. With that, then the one thing I've learned is that you ask someone for help, the good leaders, they will always say yes. And they will always point you in a direction to make you better. You just you're not going to be good at it. So just throw that out the door, throw your ego aside and try to do it every single day. So we're trying to make it part of a culture where I try to do 1 or 2 every day, along with inspections and everything else you got to do. But, and I think that's what Chief Caughey was saying is that you embed this into your culture. Even though we're doing fire attack training, you could still make a size up part of that and run it with command, right, Chief?
Yeah, and it should be, right? We shouldn't be start and stop, right? So if we're training out back on ladders, throwing ladders, we should do the full context piece, which is getting dispatched, marking on scene, practice that scene size up, then throw the ladder because it's part of it. But Aaron, I want to touch on something that you're doing on your engine company right now. You're in an engine still, aren't you?
Yep, engine 5.
All right, so just making sure they don't.
The nickel, we like to be called as East Side Pride nickel, brother. Yeah.
Perfect. When you demonstrated in practice first versus throwing the pop quiz on your crew, you're going to add some street credibility to yourself, right? One, if you make a mistake, it humbles you, but it also shows that you're human and vulnerable. But 2, it's respect for your crew to say, here's a size up of 110 Main Street. Now, Jimmy, you got the next one on 222 Verlin Way, right? And they're not shocked. They're not surprised. They don't feel self-conscious. They might still have a little pressure inside of them, but you're demonstrating it first. And I think that's important. One of the challenges as a trainer is throwing pop quizzes at people isn't always the best to get the most effective performance out of them. Give them a vision of what good looks like, and then reinforce it with them when they kind of deviate from what good looks like.
Yeah. Is there a point where that pop quiz does do them more benefit once they build that level of confidence?
You'd have to play that with your personality types and your organization, because that's an individual emotional connection you're going to have with that person, either positive or negative. Yeah. If they succeed, they're going to feel great about it. If they fail, you've probably ruined that person for that shift or that night or whatever that looks like, right? So again, there might be, but I always side on the side, let's go practice this a couple times, and then maybe in an hour we're going to have you deliver it, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a total pop quiz, but you gave them what good looks like, and then maybe later that day say, okay, it's your turn to perform now.
See, this is why I love having you on, brother. We've already talked not only command, and we've talked about culture. We talked about, how do you integrate in more training in less time? And like you said, practice like you play. So anytime you're doing anything else as far as training, you can always make command part of that. Personally, I love the carpool karaoke doing command style or carpool command. I got to come up with something cool for my crew to try with that. But a great fun way to do some size ups and to learn your territory. But I think the other part that you're establishing is a culture that embraces this. So let's dig into that a little bit. From a volunteer side, you have such a challenge getting people to training. What are some other things that you've been doing or that you've seen been working for the volunteer side of things to engage members more into training?
Yeah, so I think it's all organizations, right? Regardless of volunteer, combination, or paid. I think everybody's stretched to the ninth degree as far as how much time we have. Especially apparent in many communities where volunteering is dwindled. Janelle and I talked a little bit about it, but adding value, not monetary, but that emotional connection with your folks through training and in the command function is fun because one, they get to play a role that maybe they don't normally play. So normally they're on a hose line or pumping an apparatus or whatever their normal position is. By adding value to giving them the respect and trust to play the command function, it's, oh boy, I'm responsible for training the night. So being able to assign training to that second, third, fourth year person for that night. So if it's Tuesday night training in that volunteer department, you got command the night. So you make the crew assignments. Here's the real world assignments. Here's the training assignments. Here's the cleaning activities. You're responsible for it. It adds pride to them. It engages them. It gives them value. Just continually trying to reinvent what your daily and nightly trainings look like, whether it's volunteer or combination or career. When you have that opportunity to be with your folks, engage them, create those opportunities to have fun.
I love that. You're empowering and not just educating and teaching. And, the other thing we also touched on is, right, like you got to try to do more with less time. You got to do more with less staff. What's the other challenge you guys see, with command that we haven't really addressed yet?
So I think there's three command functions or pieces that are a challenge for anybody to agree on. Are you in a vehicle? Are you stationary? Are you outside the vehicle? And I think so. Immediately we put up our walls, right? So someone says you got to be in the vehicle. There's a wall. Then half the country thinks, oh no, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, or that person doesn't know what they're doing. And then the other side of that is you say we got to be stationary, and this person says they don't know what they're doing. So make command fit your community. When I drive the East Coast and I see row houses where 3 blocks and you can't get a 360 around it by driving it, yeah, it makes sense that you're probably not going to get a 360 function. You might even be out in the front yard because you can't get a vehicle close enough to stay in the vehicle. So I think it's very local, regardless of those things in a command car or not in a command car. The rest of the practices remain the same. Have a dedicated play system, have dedicated communication, have dedicated and pre-identified operational priorities. Make that stuff work. Now, my personal opinion, be in the vehicle because one, you get to control the environment. Two, you get to control the volume of the radio. And as I get older, I need that little bit of help. The final piece of this is as soon as you can and have the staffing and the extra person, get a forward deployed command officer that's up near the incident. So that way they can relay information and validate what's going on. And two, get somebody into your vehicle to help you manage that incident. It's easy for 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 apparatus, but anything more than that span of control, you have to have those people to support you, or an aide, as we like to call it in our system. We do something a little unique with our volunteers. We run a on-duty volunteer command officer. They get a take-home vehicle. They respond to all the call types. But then we do an OCC, our on-call command officer, and it's a secondary command officer. So we have a significant event. That on-call command officer comes in and they they ask for assignment. They either get in the vehicle and be shotgun and start doing the scribing and radio piece, or they get forward deployed in a pack and SCBA, and they just become a senior set of eyes on those fire grounds, which helps us a lot. Or the third piece is they end up covering the rest of the district to field the next calls. But bottom line, getting that person in the seat, that senior advisor role, someone to help you monitor the radios, don't miss something. One of the incidents that I reference a lot is Lieutenant Kelly from the Beacon Street fire in Boston. When you listen to that radio conversation or communication, he was calling for Mayday numerous times without anybody acknowledging on the fire ground. In fact, the dispatcher finally acknowledged it. And that might be in their system. That might be the way it's set up. By golly, I would hate to miss a Mayday call because, one, I was either distracted because I was outside the vehicle, or two, I couldn't hear the radio because I was outside the vehicle, or three, I just plain missed it because of the volume of traffic going on. So getting that aide next to you to maintain that is important. Those three things, let's not fight about inside or outside. Let's make it local for you. Get a senior advisor there as soon as possible that either gets forward deployed to give you another set of eyes and ears so that you physically don't need to be there, or three, getting them in a vehicle next to you as the aide are really critical, especially in the volunteer small departments that might say, I don't have the people for that. That's where your mutual aid partners come into impact. Start requesting that mutual aid command officer, the neighboring chiefs, hey, Jimmy, Jane, Joan, whatever, please come over on our calls, and I just need you to sit in the vehicle with me in case I miss something.
Yeah. Plus, that's also a way to get our members experience in command.
Yeah.
So now you're an aide, but it might be the opposite of that someday soon. I always love, that's why RIT companies are so valuable. Of course, everyone says, well, the odds of a RIT company actually responding. And I said, well, that's just one of the many aspects. Because I was RIT company in my first 3-4 years, and we were at least called to and engaged in some manner in the fire. And I got to learn and look at, how is this fire ground running? How are they running command? What are the different crews doing? And I think the more people we can get on scene, the more we can teach them. And especially, what you've been talking about is a solid protocol, a solid system. So that starts with what? Is that your policy then? You rewrote the policy. How did you attack that thing, that part of it by getting everybody on the same page? Where did you start?
Absolutely. It starts in training, but let's go back a couple of years. Developing a system that training looks just like real world is important. And so in training, when we do Firefighter 1 Rookie Academy, there's a command function present during every evolution. There's a driver operation function and those pieces correlate right back to the fire ground. So that way, when they get as a rookie or probationary firefighter in our system, they get on a real call, it looks just like we did in training. And to give you an example, this 14 years ago, I had an applicant at my door in the office here, filling out his application, contemplating if he wanted to join or not our organization or the neighboring organization. And we dropped a call for Walmart Distribution Center, which is just right down the road. And I said, do you want to hop in and ride with me? And he goes, yeah, I'd love to. Of course, he has no knowledge of the fire service. He gets in the rig, and as we're responding, our on-duty command officer and our engines start going en route. And I narrate to this individual in the front seat of the vehicle with me what's going to happen, what it's going to sound like. Command officer is going to get on scene. It's going to sound like this. Give a painted picture, because we've been to that building a lot, so I could do it verbatim. And by golly, guess what? The command officer got on scene, and they did exactly what we narrated en route to this individual. Well, that person is now 14 years later with us and is a division chief with us, and he tells that story about how the system was so solid that it could be anticipated while we're going to sound just like it was going to unfold when we got there. And that gave him confidence in our organization. So it was a great recruitment tool that night, but more so, it was a better service tool to our membership. So when we can create those environments, take the opportunity to do it. So that's the first part of building that system. Secondly, we did rewrite our SOGs. We wrote definitions. We wrote a common vocabulary. We built a common playbook. So when I say offensive fire attack on the alpha side, our membership knows exactly what tools, appliances, hose, and where to go and what that should look like. And if we say vertical vent on the Charlie side, they know exactly what that should look like. There's no deviation from those plays unless the conditions impact it. That gives us that one playbook for the fireground, but is the basis of our training, and the command function is all right in there, built into it. So you can't do one without the other in our system.
And everybody's on the same page. Is that in your policy, or you have components of both, right?
Components of both.
Yep. And that, like you said, I love the fact that you're like, everyone in the organization buys into that from the moment they start at the academy. So they understand what the command structure looks like. They understand when you assign a division, what that looks like. That has a supervisor. You use on deck, I believe, right? In hot zone and cold zone. So, but that's written in your policy. And so if someone doesn't have that solid policy or guidelines, is that where you would tell them to start?
Yeah, absolutely. And include your mutual aid numbers. That's part of the hack, right? That's one of the hacks in the article, is you have to include your mutual aid partners, because especially in those smaller organizations, they're coming into your incident. And if they don't fit into the incident, one, it's a risk to them or your folks. And two, they're not going to want to come because they're like, we don't know how to fit into this system. So building it, and that's that countywide field operations guide. We did the same thing. We identified terminology, we defined roles and positions, we defined apparatus, and then we built the communication all the way from how you stage, if you go level 1 or level 2 in our system, how you call for additional resources. It's all in there so that it can be trained on the system. Now, it's not perfect. We're working through it, and we probably have another decade of work to continue to revise and adapt it, but it's a starting point for us all.
You constantly reevaluate too. I mean, it's never going to be perfect, but at least people understand the basics, and the basis is there. Right now there's some chiefs and some members that are probably saying, okay, let's go back and evaluate ours. What are some things that you should look out for, and what are some of the things that maybe sidelined you or slowed you down when you were putting together your system?
Slow, consistent pressure over a long period of time will affect that change. And that's an old saying, but it is as true today as ever. So don't expect change overnight. If you do, you're probably going to alienate yourself, not be successful. Make sure that you have a body that can support you in your organization, whether that's one extra person or two extra people, so that way they can carry the message forward. So if you're trying to implement a command structure in your system, one, don't give yourself the excuse, we don't have the people, we don't need that, we don't get any calls, whatever that might be for that volunteer organization. Don't give yourself those cop-outs. Two, get that person, whether it's a neighboring fire chief or somebody in your system, to be your ally, to help convey that message. In my system, when I developed it, they had a pretty good value already of command in the system, but we built upon it. And I had my deputy chief now, which is Manny Muscas. He carried that message. When I wasn't there beating the drum, he picked up the drum and continued to beat it until we had 3 or 4 people all of a sudden beating the drum. And now we have the whole organization beating the drum.
And those organizations around you too.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And a lot of times those boundary lines are as big as the wall of China, right? They divide us, and boy, you would think it's a different country on some of those dividing lines. The more we can break that down by including them in the system so that we engage them, train with them, practice with them, then all of a sudden we start to break down that wall of China and we start to operate more smoothly.
Yeah, very well said. Always good stuff, my friend. My last question is, in the volunteer side, even in the career side, it doesn't matter. When you made these changes, what was the best way? What did you see worked the best for communication, and where did you have some hiccups?
Boy, we probably failed more than we had success in all of the things that we've implemented. But I think the communication piece is being multimedia. And it's easy that we think just talking to them at training is going to get them. Well, you only get 60% of your membership at that maybe. We think it's easy just to send out an email blast. And we're only going to get 30% of them. We also do videos. We want a video library of everything we do that are 2 to 10 minutes long that our membership can click on at any time on our private YouTube channel, and they can review that. They can see what good looks like. They can be reinforced the behaviors we want through training, and in this case, command. So our greatest task right now is to continue to build that third media environment for communication, which is the video series. And you, Aaron, you're old enough. You can probably go back to the old NFA videos that we used to get from National Fire Academy, and they were case studies like the Ford dealership in Hackensack, and we've all seen them. Well, why doesn't our organization have those little snippets of video in a cache in a library that they can click on anytime? If they want to learn about command, here's this piece. If they want to do transferring command, which is another component, here's the video on that. So it's an on-demand system. And like everything, our members go to their phone to validate what we're doing. Well, let's make the YouTube channel their encyclopedia of what LCFA does in our community. So
yeah, I think you're referencing VHS tapes there for a little bit. For our members that are very young, they used to be, well, look, Google it, they'll figure it out. Yeah, yeah. A lot of our, a lot of the times the truck manuals, whatever, they would have overviews on VHS, and you'd see a lot of VHS. Some of our stations still have the VHS tapes laying around because those cabinets probably haven't been cleaned. But yeah, I love your idea. Just modernize it a little bit. The 2 to 10 minutes. We've also talked about that here. Is that's kind of the attention span. I know mine is that now, but we've kind of trained and programmed ourselves to it. So embrace it and use it as a means to communicate. And of course, always great stuff, Chief. But you're not done. Janelle and I gotta have our way with the hot seat questions and kind of get some more insight into what's going on with you and your thoughts. So Janelle, fire away. Put them in the hot seat.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing the fire service today?
Leadership. I think the greatest challenge in the American Fire Service volunteer combination or career or metro departments is we're not doing a great job of developing leaders for the future. There's big gaps between successful leaders and then organizations that just have a gap in their system where they don't have that next level of leader. So leadership is the greatest challenge. It solves or is part of all the other challenges: financial, recruitment, retention, all those other burdens. It all stems back to leadership.
That's a common theme. You and I are good friends, and I know quite a bit about what's going on with you, but I don't know what's your biggest challenge you've overcome recently.
I think I don't know if I've overcome it, but it's a continued growth as a leader in a system that now we're building those layers in the system. So where I was comfortable with fireground tactics and operations, those aren't necessarily my bread and butter focus now. We have folks doing that. And so it's being comfortable, not being comfortable doing what I like to do, right? So it's not the political parts. It's dealing with those other aspects of leadership that is a challenge for me.
Why were you not doing them, if I can ask?
I don't do them as much. Well, before I was focused on the fireground stuff, right? That's fun. Yeah. That's cool stuff.
Zach, that's where your priority was, though, for your organization, right?
Yeah,
that's where the need was. So now it's into the new challenge, and so how is it going so far?
It's good. It's more internal, right? It's that internal battle with yourself to say it's okay, let them do it. It's all going to be fine. You don't need to micromanage them, and then making sure that my current challenge is making sure that I haven't stepped away too much from it, that I still have some involvement in it and their trust in those pieces.
Mm-hmm. Chief, final question, bring it home. What are you doing to get better right now?
Lots. And I think we asked a similar question to our applicants during their volunteer interview, and is what are you reading? What are you studying? How are you growing? How did you prepare? Those standard questions. I think as leaders, we have to take it upon ourselves to continue that mentality as we grow in our position. So one, continuing to look for what can we do better organizationally and studying those areas of deficiency. Two, reaching out to organizations that are doing good work, regardless of what that might be. If it's Otto Huber in Loveland Sims Fire Department in Ohio that's got a great health and wellness program or a great customer service program, we need to be studying those pieces. Not accepting status quo for our organization and always looking and working towards the future. This last week, we have a little event here in Cheyenne called Cheyenne Frontier Days Rodeo, and it's the largest outdoor rodeo in the world. It's a phenomenal event. If you've never been to rodeo, it's one of the most patriotic events that you can have. There's an event, bull riding, which almost everybody loves. Bull riding is incredible, and those athletes are millionaires, right? Their purse for riding a bull 8 seconds is immense. But there's 2 other or 3 other people on that field at the same time as that bull and that rider, and that's the bullfighters. Those bullfighters get paid okay, but no one knows their names unless you're the elite. But those bullfighters are there studying that bull. They know the bulls before they get out there. They watch video of them. They know how the bull moves. They're there to protect that rider. And as a chief, I consider myself kind of the bullfighter. I'm there to protect our firefighters from harming or getting harmed on the fire ground, but as equally important, protect them from the organizational politics that might negatively impact them. So we don't want our name in the lights, just like the bullfighters don't. We really want our members' name in the lights because that's what it's about.
Are those the clowns?
They dress like clowns.
Okay.
By golly, this young bullfighter got knocked out on his bull. So he's on the ground, flat, cold, and this bullfighter steps in between them, and he basically built a brick wall with his body, separating him from the bull, separating this unconscious fighter from the bull. And I thought to myself, this guy's protecting $1 million bull rider, and he's maybe making $50,000 a year, but he did it without batting an eye, without thinking about it, and it was just pure reaction. And I think about that correlation to chief officers and officers. That should be us, right? We're protecting our firefighters without batting an eye, without looking for any acknowledgments, because it's the right thing to do. So that's what I'm working on. Continue to instill that in our organization.
And you constantly find motivation from your environment if you look at it properly.
If you're studying leadership, if you're studying organizational growth, development, culture, it's everywhere around us. You just got to apply it to your organization.
Yeah, from buying a cup of coffee to watching a bull clown or a clown, or as you call them, what do you call them? The chief and clown. I'm not going to be the one who makes the connection between the chief and the clown thing. I'm just going to say fire service in general. Because you know what, as a firefighter, that's, you feel like that's what you're doing. You're going to step in harm's way to protect, the citizens.
If your officers aren't doing it for your firefighters, how do we expect them to do that for the citizens? So that's the lesson here, right?
Yeah, that's obviously a great goal. And, you have that mindset. You've groomed that mindset in your organization too. And again, I can't thank you enough for stopping by, because we always have these great conversations. Check out the article that we referenced here, Command Hacks for Volunteer Fire Departments, the 4 key steps for minimizing incident command challenges. This is all part of our command coverage, and thanks to Pulsera for sponsoring that. If you are listening to us right now, you got to take a look. Chief, you seem to look younger and younger as time goes on. So you check that out on our YouTube page. You go to firerescue1.com and click on the banner for Better Every Shift and watch this on video, or you can just Google us on YouTube. You can also rate, review the show. If you have questions for Chief, if you want some of his policy, I know that he would be more than happy to help you out. You can email us at bettereveryshift@firerescue1.com. We also want you to rate, review the show, and please share with your fellow misfits that believe in getting a little bit better every single day and trying to surround yourself with people that do the same, because it's all about learning something, doing something, and sharing something to make you and those around you better every shift. Thanks for listening, everybody.